Hello everyone and welcome to this webinar. What are we going to do? We're going to cover the trends of winter spring 2024. So a lot is coming up. Well, what are we going to see? Because we're going to cover a lot in this webinar. The first thing we're going to see is curls, curls, curls. We can't avoid them. We've obviously been through a whole period already where we all can cut those curls in a special way, getting more out of what's there. But we still have a very large target group who doesn't have curls naturally. And then we may cut as much as we want, but of course that won't work. So what's coming back into the salon big time? That's permanente. And I'm sure the elders among us think, oh nice, I've done that a lot. And maybe you're starting to do it again. But the younger ones among us might think, oh no, permanent, I'm not interested at all. But you can't let this trend pass you by in your salon. It can't be that a customer comes into your salon and says, well, I don't want to. I would love to have that beautiful curl you talk about, well, I'm down for it. Then you really have a missed opportunity. So the first trend that I'm going to explain to you step by step is how to make it look nice. Because there are different ways to do it. And also various products. So watch with me and make sure you really get this trend right. Watch along and step by step. I'll explain it to you now. In the past, we always had to choose between permanent and coloring. But nowadays, that's not necessary anymore. Even if your client has highlights or a soft balayage, we can still do permanent. And that's possible with our EcoWave, but I'll tell more about that in a moment. Because the first steps you have to take are very important for getting a nice, even, uniform curl. Look, when you perm your hair with natural ingredients and highlights, then the base is not entirely equal because the highlights are missing keratin. And then the fluid will also absorb differently there. So it's important that we pre-treat the hair first. And we do that as follows. First, we take step 1, the volume champagne. That ensures that the hair is completely cleaned on the outside and that you can really feel a cuticle layer. Well, we do that once, we do it twice, and if you then run your fingers through the hair, it really makes that squeaking sound. Then you make the towel dry. And from there, you'll do the erect test. You pull on the hair and then you check if there's a keratin or moisture deficit. I was just talking about that highlighted hair. So right there on those hairs, you also do a direct test. And then comes step 2, Keraboost infusion. That's liquid keratin. It really soaks into the hair and goes where the hair needs it. A few pumps of that, and then you apply the Keramax treatment on top of it to make sure it stays nicely in the hair. What do we create then? All equal hair that is nourished from the inside. Then I also have equal hair, all of which take on the same thing, the permanent curl, and that's very important. You see, Keramax treatment is not a condition because you might think that, but that's not the case. So first step 1, 2, and 3. Before you actually start perming, well, imagine if you pull really hard on the hair and there's no movement. Look, then you have to start preparing that hair for the perm solution absorption. Then you do steps 1, 2, and 3, but then you switch the Keraboost infusion and the Keramax tricum. So switch to the best shampoo and the best shampoo. Then you soften that hair to let the perm solution soak in better. So the most important thing when you decide to get a perm is on bleached, well, not completely bleached hair, but on highlighted hair or with balayage, that you first nourish the hair from the inside out, making it completely even, that it's completely filled so you have an even base to start perming. So these are the first steps you need to take. Once we've rinsed out step 3, then we can move on to wrapping. Well, wrapping is also somewhat different when, well, the early years when I started, about 35 years ago. As you can already see, is there space in between or further than usual? So the pass you take is a bit larger than the wrap you put in. Now I have also chosen for very coarse wrap, so black, you can vary in this as well. Look, I know this thrill. It can also be done permanently, but it's made from yak hair, which comes from some kind of animal. So I know this hair catches very well, that's why I use it. Now also black wraps. I also use black wraps with clients when I really want to make a very coarse wave, but as a yap, I just wrap the old-fashioned way with a wrapping paper around the tip. I smooth it out with my finger into a flat circle around the wrap. And then, in that way, I make sure the tip is nicely smooth in there. If you're in doubt now, you can still go along it with your tail comb. That the tip nicely wraps around the collar, and then you continue wrapping. With equal excitement, and then you put the elastic around it, and I'll move on to the next one. So, if you're going for a perm, take thicker sections than you usually do. The wraps don't all have to be tight against each other. And don't use yellow-pink rollers because that will result in a very tight end curl, which is not what we want. Because the trend is really that very nice loose curl. So again, wrap the paper around the tip, twist, keep the tension on your past, then secure the elastic band. Well, this is quite a typical, this is a typical 9-compartment distribution. And in this way, we perm if the hair is like this. Shoulder length, just over shoulder length. But if we continue to long hair, and I'll include that as well, because I've already done my prep work for it. So look, if it's really long, we'll have to work with a double wrap. So that means you have one pass, and in one pass there are 2 wraps. Well, I'll show that. See, and then you can also vary with the different wrap thickness matters for the effect, since I've combined black at the bottom with light and dark gray at the top. Okay, but I also take a rough pass and then I'm going to refine it, but I keep the outer pass on my finger. Look, so I go inside, erase my past will I do it. And the 2 outer ones stay in place because then it just wraps the nicest. This part I flip forward. This I can lift. And when do you use a double winding? When do you really use 2 passes or 2 wraps in your pass? That's when you do differently. Or get too much hair on one spool and then with it moistened, it just can't go on. It's not holding well, so you might end up making a looser curl. Keep the tension on, or secure it. Look, and then I move on to my previous one, which I thus unraveled from the inside. Look, and if I moisten now, then I'm certain, so that every hair, even the ones deep inside my curl, gets enough liquid on it. So keep the tension up. Look, and now I've opted for a slightly smaller wrap on top. This wrap also goes on top. So you do 2 rollers in one pass. So thinning out and then twist the hair in that way. This is for just over the shoulder, chest length, if you have really longer lengths on top. Then you have a double chamber. That is not necessary. But when you're going to do that in a salon, then you're obviously also going to spend extra time and you'll have to use more solution. An extra neutralization, so you'll have to adjust your price accordingly. Okay, let's go back because then comes the next step, moisturizing. I start with a water edge. The water's edge is moist. In the middle of my water's edge, I make a notch and put it around my first wrap. Why do I use a damp water edge? To protect the skin. It's damp, so the liquid can't fully penetrate. Look, that's how you secure it. Imagine you have wrapped it very tightly now. Then you don't want the elastic bands mark in the hair. You could choose to put a stick in between. And then you lift the elastic band. And then you insert your support rod. like this, well, then we're going to moisten. Look, I'm using the EcoWave now, and the EcoWave is the latest liquid we've developed. Then we have the 0 and the 1 in it, and I'm using the 1 now. 0 is for very strong, difficult, the permanent hair, the gray hair that you can't get through. And the solution 1 from EcoWave, and I'm really happy with it, it's for normal hair, colored hair, and highlighted hair. So that means this liquid, great for using with those clocks, wants curls despite having highlights. Then moisturizing. Look, you should see it as a sugar cube that you hold in the tea. If I toss a sugar cube into my tea all at once, it takes a while to dissolve. If I hold the sugar cube just like that at the top of the tea, it soaks itself up. With the liquid, with the tea, it's the same with the perm solution. So drop by drop, let it come into contact with my perm solution. Look, and then I really will have to go over it a few times, but I prefer it slowly absorbs. Then, when I throw such a splat on it in one go, and I'm not sure if every hair is soaked with the perm solution. Well, if you look now, there are 2 bottles in the box. It contains ready-to-use fixation. That bottle is a bit larger. I will show it on screen later. And the smaller bottle, the Eco WV over here, that is your permanent wave solution. So apply little droplets, let the hair fully absorb them. Look, on the left and right, you might drop a droplet now and then, but usually with your client, you'd have a towel under their back. The cape, a towel over it, you really have to do everything to protect it. Always warn your client about the smell, because the EcoWave does smell better than the regular perm solutions. But there's always still a bit of a smell to it. Okay, I think the hair is now completely saturated with the perm solution. So what I do next, and I hope I can show it well, then I lift the wrap and then I see small bubbles. I see it rising. So if you wrap your perm, it pulls up and you see tiny bubbles rise. Maybe that's not quite clear on camera. But then I know, okay, the hair is filled with the solution. Then you grab what's called a cold cap, a plastic cap. You pour it over, because this is actually a self-heating permanent. So no additional heat is involved. The only thing we still do is put a towel over it. So we place the towel over it like this, and then we set a timer for 15 minutes. After those 15 minutes, we'll check if it has taken on the pattern of the curler I wrapped. So we'll look at that together soon. Now that the perm is setting, I can nicely explain the differences between the solutions, like when do you choose which solution. I start with our showpiece, the Centuries. I just mentioned it, our latest permanent wave solution that has been launched, and which this is also the only liquid you can use with those highlights in your hair. Then we have the EcoWave Zero. So for very strong, hard to perm hair, we have EcoWave number 1. 1, and that's for normal, colored and highlighted hair. So what makes the EcoWave so special? It's free from ammonia, and I hope I pronounce it correctly, free from thioglycolate. And it gives such a smooth, bouncy curl, which we see in women at the moment, but also in men. So don't forget the Eco Curl, to be used by the parish priest, but I'll get back to that shortly. Next, we have the other liquid, which is just a bit stronger, and that's the neutral weave. We have the neutral weave. Zero is also for difficulty. Tough, difficult hair to perm. Then we have neutral wave 1. This is for normal hair use. And we have the neutral wave too. That's for porous hair and dyed hair. What's the difference between the neutral wave and the echo wave? With the echo wave, if you think I just need a slightly stronger curl, then you go for the neutral wave. But if you're going permanent for the first time, I'd always start with the echo wave. Start as gently as possible, and then you can always build up. Next, we have the energy wave. That's just a bit stronger than the neutral wave. If you switch to the energy wave, then it will really, yes, needs to be found more, used more as support. Think, for example, of blow drying, or even earlier, of water waving. We have zero there too. For very difficult, the permanent hair, one is for normal hair, and the last two are also for porous hair and for dyed hair. Then we have the very last liquid, and that is the keratin wave. We have that in a liter package. And this perm is really for the older lady who wants a water wave, that you really get that very firm to make permanent as a base for vunin or for water waving. Those are actually the different categories. But what I just mentioned, the trend that is currently happening is that whole, the loose, bouncy curl that we're seeing in both ladies and gentlemen. And then apply your eco wave. It looks perfect with that. We are now 15 minutes later. Look, normally you just look at your client. You then look at the chairs for a perm. Well, I've had a perm before, so I know it's okay after 15 minutes, but I let you guys know. See the wrap pattern, how to check it, remove everything, get rid of the cotton or a towel. There. So let's see how I can best capture this. I think this way. Look, if I turn it back without tension, don't put any tension on it. Look, and when I push it back, I can see the curve here in my curl, and it's equal to the black wrap I've coiled. So in that way, I know, okay, it's had its full time. How long can you keep the liquid? It says 10 years, up to 20 minutes. Never go straight for 20 minutes. Anyway, then you can reach over the rack, and then it's steep again. So always start with 12 to 15 minutes and check it then. And if necessary, add some more time. From there, we'll rinse for 5 minutes. And I'll show you, do that really with a timer or your phone. Really go rinse for 5 minutes. Because honestly, I know hairdressers, and 5 minutes in hairdresser time is often 2 to 3 minutes. Really rinse for 5 minutes. And if you have a double winding, you're going to rinse for 7 minutes, because then you have a lot of hair to rinse. What is important is that all the permanent oxygen gets out. Okay. I've now rinsed for 5 minutes, and then it's very important that we pat the hair dry. I first remove the excess water with a towel. I squeeze it out, or I'm actually pressing against the wraps. But your towel isn't enough, as the hair is actually that dry. The more neutralization you can take on, the more beautiful your curl pattern will be. So from there, I'm going to work with sugar fats. Then you can see how much moisture such as suction fat absorbs. In this way, make the hair as dry as possible, so you remove as much moisture as possible. So after your towel, always follow up with the suction device. Either with paper towels or at least something paper-based that absorbs moisture. Because you can understand, if the hair is still very moist and you then neutralize it, that neutralization gets diluted. This is the EcoFix, a ready-to-use neutralizer for the perm. Watch out, we're going to neutralize this twice. So the first time you use about 1/3 of it, 2/3 of the bottle the first time, and 1/3 the second time. So we start from the bottom of the neck, drop by drop. We're going to moisten that hair. I don't have a real client right now. Normally you would tilt your client's head up a little. That way you can access it easily. But at least from the bottom up, so that each hair gets the right amount of liquid in one go. If you start at the top, it all trickles down first. So build up from the bottom. Look, I used to apply that perm solution very carefully, drop by drop. This can be a bit more rough, but make sure that you go around the wraps a few times to ensure the liquid is nicely absorbed. When I remove the colors, I take the sheet on the floor and throw it away. But do you remember back in the day when you used to save the papers? At least you did that in my salon back then where I worked, and then dry them all on the blotter, heating in a container, and then reuse it. Well, we're not doing that anymore, right? So I take the sheets in my hand and throw them away. Well, once all the wraps are out, then we'll do it one last time. We're going to neutralize it, so the last of the bottle goes on. I squeeze it empty into the hair. I make sure it's evenly distributed. And so it is empty. I'll squeeze it one more time. There we go. And then I let it set for the last time for 5 minutes. And again, with a double winding, let it sit for 7 minutes. So you're giving it an extra 2 minutes. When the 5 minutes are up, then we'll rinse the hair again. At least we're also wrapping up because we still have to apply step 4 and step 5 of the plan. So first, rinse thoroughly. You see, I always choose to wash it once more with shampoo in the salon, just to get some of the smell out. But essentially, it's not necessary if you rinse it well. And you know what's also nice to know? Right after the perm, you can go straight for a soft shave. So a toner can be applied immediately. Permanent wave solution always tends to slightly strip the hair of some color. So you can use soft shaves, and you might also opt to apply a bit of color conditioner. But first, we're going to seal the hair. So this time I'm choosing the shampoo for once. I'm completely crazy busy. So I decide to take control once. Imagine if you had to choose between a shampoo that performed the best in tests or one that made your hair look the most beautiful. You'd go for the shampoo. Whether you're fine just rinsing it, the choice is yours. Well, then I'll just give it a nice wash. And so, please, and then I can really close it off well, because you obviously make sure you maintain the shape well. My advice is always, after a permanent, don't wash your hair for the first 48 hours after getting home. It needs to harden a bit to maintain its shape of content. So like this, so I squeeze out the excess water, and then I'm moving on to step 4. Step 4, I'll bring it into view. Okay, step 4, Care Balance Acidifier. It's a very acidic product that sneaks into the hair cuticles. So I spread it over my hands, and then I squeeze it into the hair in this way. I make sure all those scales close up nicely, making the hair shine again. And it really does make sure the shape stays nice. Well, after I've kneaded it in, I just let it sit for a bit longer, just another 1 to 2 minutes to let it do its thing. And from there, I could continue. For step 5, we are 2 minutes further along. I'm going to rinse it out because you do have to rinse out step 4. You can't leave it in the hair. Voor ook zij, teksten, ook gehote, as I say. So then I make it towel dry. And I am not going to rub, I am squeezing the hair. I keep squeezing those curls. And then stop at 5. The Kera Shield Leave-In, that's truly your protection. It provides a shield against the heat of your styling tool from the outside. Look, it actually turns white in your hands when you rub it. I just grabbed a very small piece. I'm squeezing out of that one again. And you don't rinse this product out. So from here, you're done with your palm and you can move on to the cutting phase. The Italian bob is a fun cut to use with this shape, but I'll cover that later in my webinar. So if you now want to perm someone and a lot of length needs to be cut off afterwards, cut it then. Take it beforehand and then check it again afterwards because it would be a shame to perm all those lengths. Next up, your product choice. Look, a curl is a bunch of hair together and that's how you want to keep it. That's why I go for the twister. The twister is a curl cream and it also makes sure it keeps the bundle together but still maintains the bounce. So distribute in the hands. Explain this well to your client too. Look, rule number 1 in perms is of course so do not brush the hair and do not comb the hair. That bundle needs to stay together and that's something the customer should also know. So explain it well. Okay, from here I'm going to start styling. But honestly, I still have some products on my hands. I can't hold my hairdryer, so I'm just going to quickly wash my hands and then I'll be right back. Yes, here we are again. When we're going to dry the hair, I'll do it without. Let me show you. When we're drying the hair, you don't want that woozy wind on it. Why? Then that bundle will disperse again. So I have a diffuser on my phone. Yes, I think everyone has a diffuser in their salon. And also tell your customer they really should get such a diffuser, purely to spread the wind. This one is from Silicon. Okay, the temperature. Don't put it on the warmest, the second warmest. And the wind speed, look, I can increase it, but I set the wind speed to 1. That locks it in. And then I'll be very careful. Let the wind do its thing and then dry the fireplace that way. The customer themselves might also be hanging upside down. I've styled the Italian bob in this line, but you'll see that in a moment. I've now completely dried it with a diffuser and then I just need to finish it off a bit. I placed a clamp by the ear. She doesn't have a real ear, but of course a client can still do this. But you can see that you just get a really nice loose curl, and on a timer in the country is even more flexible than on such a mad head because as I mentioned, this is yak hair and often after just 1 or 2 washes, even with your clients, then is the most comfortable. Then it just loses that bit of stiffness. Mooi zo, als die kan zien. Completely the trend of now. The perm, that is, I say grab those wraps and get to work with them. Now, let's move on to the next item. Okay, so we've covered the perm now, but I'll lay it out for you once again. It is in English and that's for the following reason. In fact, this webinar will be translated into other languages. You'll see me speaking Italian, German, English, Russian, exactly, and then also my mouth moving along. So that's why we did it in English, but let me repeat it in Dutch now for you. Okay, important. Step 1, 2 and 3, make the hair nice and full. Make it healthy. First, make your wrapping choice and then wrap nicely. Then gradually apply the liquid so the hair slowly absorbs the permanent solution. Cover it with a plastic cap and a towel. Then set your timer. Start with about 12 or 15 minutes and then check on it. Wrap selection, or if the angle of your wrap is right, otherwise give it a little more time. Then rinse 5 minutes, set a timer. Really wash all the perm solution out. Dry well. Even with your suction fats, get all the moisture out, as much moisture as possible. Then fixate, let it sit for 5 minutes. Then you will take out your wraps and fixate them again for 5 minutes. Then give it a wash with shampoo, just for the nice smell. And then finish with your step 4 and step 5. And for the following reason, I'm repeating this. Because this is actually the next trend, the men mullet. And okay, I know we have to work our audience up to it, as we've seen the trend among men, that it was perm from the crown forward and that the sides and the back were a bit shorter. But what we're seeing now is still that loose curl for men, so we're still going permanent. But we're creating some length in the back and the side is cut short. So when I move on to the next one, you can see all sorts of variations of the mullet here. One is stronger, another is milder. But what's also typical, that the curls stay in those gentlemen's hair. And then you have a special way of wrapping, which I'm going to show now through an animation, how to place those wraps. From the crown, roll forward in a brick pattern, and below the crown, roll downward in a brick pattern. Be careful, use support rods for rinsing, otherwise your wraps will come out. KIS is launching a new product, the Miracle Splash. In 14 seconds, you create a supreme shine in the hair. This product is silicone-free. It is square. It gives a velvet smooth feeling to the hair. It does not weigh down the hair. It improves manageability and the hair becomes more elastic. How do you use it now? You wash the hair with a shampoo of your choice. You rinse out the shampoo, dry the towel and then apply the Miracle Splash to the hair. Massage in for 14 seconds. Rinse off and behold a tremendous shine on the hair with our new product, Miracle Splash. Subtitles by the Amazon community. I must say, the Italian bob has been kind of around for like 2 months now, but we always have to guide our customers a bit. So that's why I'll show it to them for a bit longer. Normally, we made mood boards and then we were ahead of the trend, but nowadays everything changes with social media. In the past, we had Facebook, and of course we still have it, but yes, with the arrival of TikTok, trends go super fast. Being on top of the trend, and at first I never wanted to join TikTok. I thought, you know, I have Instagram, I have Facebook, I have my Pinterest. My children, 18 and 19, said, Mom, you really need to be on TikTok. And especially my daughter said, so many trends pass by. So I did create an account. I'm not active, but that way I can see what's going on. That's such an Italy book. What's typical? The ladies all go shorter and the Italian bob is always off the shoulders. At the top, there's a very soft layering, so we can really wear that lock to the left or the right, because that's also typical. It always has to be worn sideways. The bottom is beautifully blunt cut, leaving you with a nice full bottom. And when I show the next slide, this is already my Italian bob. You can see that too. And you know what's great? It leads me to jump to the next point. The 90s one blown are coming back too. And that means we're going old school with the round brush, just nicely blow drying, nicely polishing. But these are all examples of the Italian bob, and I'm going to show you how it's cut. Subtitles submitted by the Amazon. This is a concise version of cutting the Italian bob, because this movie is already on YouTube. I posted it a few weeks ago, but just a quick recap. I divided the scalp, drew a straight line on the occipital bone. And then I first got a very blunt line at the bottom. So you cut all the hair projected downwards and cut in a straight line. From there, you section off 4 areas because you're projecting the hair upwards to add layers by trimming. When you perm the hair, I wouldn't recommend cutting, but trimming. You project it upwards, you determine your line, and then with your knife, when you're not going to perm it, you're going to cut it to create that very soft layer on top. Make sure to pay attention to the position of your knife, that you insert it at an angle so you can remove the hair in one go. This creates a very soft point. Then it's just a bit different than when you cut it. You'll be able to see that clearly in a moment. I project everything upwards towards that sky. And then the layers on the side, they get longer and longer. This is also necessary when I perm it, then I need a slightly shorter layer on top. And at the bottom, I need a full layer. Well, if you're not going to perm, but when you continue cutting, then it's best to very gently thin out the top scalp with your knife. That creates a very soft layered effect, because that is typical for a very nice, thick, full line that is bluntly cut, but with a soft layering on top. By keeping your knife flat on the hair, you gently remove the hair and get a nice, smooth point at the top. I project the front part forward and cut it this way, because when she turns her hair back, it won't settle. No shorter hair than the long hairs overshadow the others. So here is the brief version of the Italian bob. If you want to see the whole thing, check out my YouTube channel. Subtitles submitted by Mauro. From the Italian bob, we move to a new color trend, which is the cowboy copper, for really beautiful, warm copper shades, but with a 3D feel. So it does have different colors in it. As you can see here, there are some lighter and darker strands, so you need to create a very nice base for that. I already mentioned 3D, and I'm about to show you how we're going to do that. But you can do that very nicely with your soft shades or your DME color, making your paint a paint wash. And I say that for the following reason, and please listen carefully, because this is very important. It's already happening in my salon. I have blonde ladies that I've worked very hard on to achieve a beautiful blonde shade. And then they come with copper, or you give the advice yourself. Then I can easily fill that hair with paint. Then I go all the way to the fiber layer. At those color molecules, I can fill that weirdly beautiful with copper. But then maybe she's colored with copper 3, 4 times or 2, 3 times, and then she says in the summer, hey, I want to go back to blonde hair. And oh, if that hair is filled to the core of the fiber layer with copper tones, you, as a hairstylist, will have to work extremely hard again. So I do it like this. I'm going to color with the soft shade scissors. Of course, we have the 0.6 kilograms, we have the 0.9 grams, we have the 0.7 kilograms, we have the 0.8 kilograms. We've got mixed tint, so you can really bring out aspects with it, but you can't always cover everything with that. So what you can do is make your dye a DME coloring. That then right in your cuticle layer, a tiny bit into your fiber layer. Because for me, as a hairdresser, if she comes back 3 times later and she wants to go blonde again, it's much easier to go back to blonde than when I just fill it up with 3% covering her whole head. So watch out, always think a couple steps ahead. Imagine she wants to go back to blonde. Then you might think, well, that color might wash out a bit easier at home. But then we have our beautiful Apricot Glam Wash, our color shampoo for maintenance at home. The opportunity of the copper conditioner is missing. Keep up with the color nicely. That 3D color, as I mentioned, I have more examples of that here. This is all from TikTok again, all inspiration and those girls who end up buying it. But at all times, you want that color play, that 3D feel. You want to keep it in the hair, and I'm going to show you how you can easily apply it. I start with sectioning of the Scandinavian hairline. Typical for the Scandinavian hairline is that it's very fine and very thin. Unfortunately, it doesn't work on the mane because it's very thickly planted with hair, but that's what you intend for your client. That you take up a very fine edge, really that lanugo hair, and then all the way up with the edges. Along with the contour line, it's almost a third of what I use here. This is way too much. If you were to do this with a customer, you'd get such a thick, full edge, and that's not what you want. Next, I'm going to section off a scalp because I want to find that 3D feeling in my cowboy heads again. At the bottom, I just leave the color, but before I start making strands, I first section off the bottom so that I am providing a nice piece of work. So the Scandinavian hairline, it keeps looking good. I'll secure everything underneath it. Then I'll divide the upper part into 3 sections because I'm going to make 3 tails in there. The first one I make is a bit coarser. That's no issue because later I will color the ponytail in different passes. The 2 ponytails behind, you can see them here too. They are a bit finer. Use an old elastic band that you can later cut through at the sink. That's always better when they pull it out. Your last tail, and this one is important, shouldn't be below the crown. So I'll place it here too. On the crown, if you go below the crown, you can create a line which you don't want. So always on the crown, the top, but not underneath. Well, here you can clearly see my section. So I have a Scandinavian hairline. I've divided it into a horseshoe, 3 ponytails on top. And here you can see atop the bun, my last ponytail sits. Then I'm going to work with Snow White at 3%. I don't want a very strong lightening. It should just be a slight color play in the hair. The front strand is a bit thicker, so I divide it into 2 sections. It's just the old-fashioned balayage technique that you're going to employ, but only on the top part of the hair. I apply the bleach using my board, but I won't push the bleach in hard. You turn your pass over, and then I also include the bottom. But please don't push the bleach into your hair because you want to keep as much natural hair on the inside as possible. The next pass, I'll do the same as the one before, but it all goes into 1 foil. The second ponytail is then a bit thinner, and I insert that one as a whole. I don't divide it further. Just use 1 sheet again. If you're doing multiple passes, you don't need to use different sheets. It can all go on 1 sheet. Just make sure not to squeeze the top too tightly. Leave some space because you don't want to see an imprint in the hair if there would be more bleaching agent there. For the last section, I do the same thing. I apply my bleach to it. I go up to the elastic, but I fade it out a bit. I close it, and in this way, in 3 steps, you've already created a lightening at the top. Then I move on to the Scandinavian hairline. Here on the scalp, I have to apply it in 1 go, fully saturating. But when I do this in the salon and I manage to get a very fine section, then it may be that I only use it in the last 10 minutes of the processing time because that very fine hair also lies on very quickly. But I work in a madhouse, so I deploy it right away. Work with your foils from below the contour upwards, then your foils won't get in the way. When your client at the front just has a small goodie, you don't have to wrap it in foil, then you can flip it forward and apply it on the scalp. Simply deploy. But if your client has completely dark hair and you need to lighten it all, then I would definitely use foil. But here you can see with a few foils, you thus have your lightening technique already in place. Once it has been left to process, I've now let it sit for about half an hour. Then I open it, look, and then I see exactly what I want to see, the nature within. Because when I undo the braid, then I keep that very nice diffused effect. The soft shades go over it. I make a combination of AO6KG, 09G, and a little bit of copper mix. I'll then cover it entirely. See, the dark hair will get just a hint of copper sheen. But the light parts, they become a bit lighter copper. And that gives a very nice 3D effect. Look, now I'm doing it with copper to bring out those cowboy heads. But of course, you can also color this perfectly with our new soft shades. Soft Thank you for doing it. The next color trend, And you've already seen me do that just now because, of course, we can use it in different ways. But that's the Scandinavian hairline. What does it mean? It's a very thin line at the front, which you can also clearly see in the picture. That is totally bleached. If you then wear it backwards, you get that very fresh Scandinavian feel. But you can also use it as a base, for example, for your cowboy hats, because that's what I did too. So very softly. It gets lightened and do that with a very low hydrogen. You don't have to get started with 6 or 9% because this is that lanugo hair, that very fine edge of hair at the front. So with 1.9%, you can easily do that. Light up. When you now, if you're going to do this, do it at the end of your technique because it doesn't need to work long. Or when you have to do the entire passe, now imagine it's completely dark, then I would wrap it in a foil, but only then. The last 10 minutes, for example, when all your technique has been involved, you add that as well because, of course, you wouldn't want that it's going to break off, that it's too intense for the hair. Imagine if the spots are blonde, you can do it very easily at the sink, right on the head. You can just rub in that bleaching and just pour it for a few minutes. Because that hair, it's going to link up very quickly and it gives that fresh feel. Blonde Scandinavian vibe, that's why they call it the Scandinavian hairline. Here you see all different types of it. This one is a bit more dominant. You can see it very fine here too. It truly gives such a soft highlight feeling, gives it. Then I'll immediately head it into our newest colors of the soft shades. Also that you can use that very nicely to tone the hair. Look, we've got 5 new shades. We've got the 010B, really fantastic and gorgeous, that beige shade. You all must know the 09B. But we also have the 010B now, which gives just that very soft beige feeling. And you know what the beauty is of the B series? It suits everyone. Whether your client is warm or cool, it does not matter. This is Dan from area code 101 North. You can also use that very well, like a garment with your other colors to somewhat soften it. But on its own, it is also a very beautiful, soft, natural shade. Then we have the 010 and natural warmth. Don't be afraid of the word warm, but it's just a very nice, soft, warm tint and nothing yellow or anything like that on it because I know with your caps. It's like, you know, the 09NW, you think natural warmth and I set it on a yellow highlight. That won't work. Well, it does because it blends in very nicely. They're very soft blondes. Gold blonde, he draws it close. Then the last one, the 0.9 gigabytes. Then we have mixed gold and a B. And that too gives, it has a fantastic color. So on the 10th floor, we got some colors added. On the 9th floor, we got a few colors added. That is also completely in line with the latest trend of the Nordic colors of the soft shades. I mentioned him before, the 90s boy, Skin Flash. So we're really going back to old school fun. I'll show you in a moment how to do it best. Because then you really have to train on it. Well, yes, I know. We start over again. I might be a day older, but 35 years ago, we really had a lot of customers who came every week to water or to blow dry. And then we really learned to roll, band, polish, and polish. And this can only be learned by doing train, train, party, party, train, train. Okay. So it's really the classic found again, which I love very much, and you could see that again with the Italian bob. Here a few examples. Beautiful round brush, blow dry finish. Also choose the right thickness of your brush, that matters too. Too small with your brushes. And as a tip, which I'll show you in a bit, I always use Velcro rolls. That he cools down in that way too, and then you really get that 90s blow dry in there. And now I'm going to show you. So I've prepared everything for the blow drying. After all the Rizme products, I'll be working with the blow dry gel, which is a liquid reinforcement. But I can also, I thought that was really beautiful, the 90s, create a dry look. Then add a little bit of clam shine. Not too much, but I really want it to be nicely polished and to have that shine. And that's what the clam shine helps with. Then I really did pick up a thick brush because I really want to make that big round shape. Then I've got my hairdryer. The advantage of this nozzle is that it's as wide as my hairdryer, or if it's as wide as my brush. And that saves me time because I want to get from A to B as quickly as possible. Then I will also have my Velcro roller ready. You all can see that. I have two different sizes. I'm definitely taking a thick roll. Look, I don't want to make a complete curl, but really that beautiful found look that I just showed you, that's what I want to put in. So I'm going to use this. Just watch with me, because once I'm blow drying, I can't talk as nicely because the blow dryer makes quite a noise and I have to speak over it. Take a little bit of styling gel in your hands. Very nice foam. Yes, lotion it is. Distribute well in the hair. Well, I must say that my mop is still soaking wet, so I'm going to wring out the excess first. Before I really start brushing, I take 2 pumps of the Glam Shine. Distribute well. And what that pear thing is for the Italy Balkans, as I mentioned, is to wear it on the side. But we're not going to blow dry it to the side, we're going to blow dry it back so she can toss it to the side later. Because if I push him aside directly, I strongly make such a partition and I do not want that. So just watch along with me. Important in the 90s blow dry is that you go according to the ABC, that is to say. Saying the base and then the middle section. And then the tip, look, when the hair is a bit shorter, you can wrap it around your brush in one go. But it's really important to polish the hair, so blow with a scale layer to nicely close them, giving it a shine. I'll start at the top, because when I start at the neck, the top might already be turning in its natural fall for about a quarter of an hour. And then it might not sit well. So I always start at the top, then I move to the side and the back. After cooling down, I put in a Velcro roll so it takes on a nice shape. Look, this way everything can cool down nicely. The only thing I did just now was apply the finishing spray over it. Well, I'll just let it sit for a few seconds. Then you can take them all out. Look, we all know age cools down, it retains that shape. You can really see the volume in it now. Do not take too small rolls of Velcro either. Look. And then it's the matter, I really do it with a coarse comb. I comb through it and then I give it the model I want to have in it. I'm going to the front for a bit so I can see what I'm doing. Oh dear, adding one more time. Look, during this webinar, we've talked about a lot. We definitely discussed the poem, but we surely talked about the Italian bob as well. You see it here. We've got cowboy coffee. Copper is a translation by, we've got the Scandinavian hairline and we've got the 90s blowout. So you can also mix all the trends beautifully together. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this webinar. Get to work with it and see you next time. KIS.